Hello there. My name is Bishop Ricky Holmes, and welcome to today's broadcast. I believe in a creator because I believe in a world that did not create itself. Now, we know that the universe had a beginning. We'll examine that in more detail shortly. But if the universe had a beginning, then it had to have a cause. This is known as the law of causality, and it is the fundamental principle of science. Without the law of causality, science is rendered useless because, after all, science is the search for causes. Now, if there's one thing we've observed about the universe, is that things don't happen without a cause. A smartphone doesn't just appear out of nothing. There is a reason for its existence. Cars do not drive themselves. Software does not write itself. Computers do not assemble themselves. These things are not self-existent. They have a beginning, and therefore they have a cause. Now, I know that there are some who will argue that the law of causality doesn't exist. But when they say that, just ask them, what caused you to come to that conclusion?
I have thoughts.
Now, according to the basic law of science, anything that has a beginning has a cause. But did the universe have a beginning? That is the question we must address. There was a time when the average atheist would answer no to that question. They would argue that the universe is eternal. But thanks to the brilliant calculations of a German-born physicist by the name of Albert Einstein, all that has changed. The scientific community now believes that our universe did indeed have a beginning. Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity is the fifth line of scientific evidence that the universe had a beginning, and its discovery was the beginning of the end for the idea that the universe is eternal. The theory itself, which has been verified to 5 decimal places, demands an absolute beginning for time, space, and matter. Now, why is this important? Because if the universe had a beginning, then it has to have had a cause. What caused the universe to come into being? We know that the universe did not create itself. Hence, the universe must owe its existence to someone outside itself. Now, you might ask, why did I say someone and not something? Well, because the universe has order and design. And where there is design, there must be a mind. Therefore, the universe owes its existence not to something, but to someone of unlimited power and infinite knowledge.
We have a saying in science: extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof.
It is now incumbent upon the atheist to explain creation's existence apart from a creator. This creates a major dilemma for the atheist. How do you explain how the universe came into existence uncaused out of nothing? You know, it really does require more faith to be an atheist than to be a Christian. We are going to build our argument for the creation of the universe upon 4 proven scientific facts. The first of which is the law of thermodynamics. The law of thermodynamics states that the universe has a certain amount of energy, and that energy is slowly ebbing away. How does this prove that the universe had a beginning? Well, look at it this way. If the universe is running out of power, this means that the universe's supply of power is not infinite, but limited. In much the same way that the gas tank in our automobiles is limited. If our automobile runs out of gas, that means its supply of gas is not infinite. At some point, our gas tank was filled, and at some point it was depleted. The same is true of the universe. Because the universe is running out of energy, its supply of energy cannot be infinite. At some point, our universe was energized, and at some point, its energy will be exhausted. Ergo, the universe had a beginning. The second law that proves our universe had a beginning is known as the law of entropy. This is a fancy way of saying that nature tends to bring things to a state of disorder. That is, with time, things naturally fall apart. That's right, our cars fall apart, our houses fall apart, our bodies fall apart. But if the universe is becoming less ordered, then one must ask, where did the original order come from? The third scientific argument that proves creation had a beginning is the expanding universe. In 1927, the legendary astronomer Edwin Hubble looked through his telescope and saw evidence that proved Einstein's calculations were correct. Edwin Hubble saw that the universe is expanding and that it's expanding from a single point. Now, why is this important? Because we know that the universe is expanding. So if we could reverse time so that the universe does not expand but contracts, we would eventually get to a point where the universe began. In other words, we would eventually reach the point of nothingness. The expanding universe tells us that once there was nothing, and then time, matter, and space came into being. How do we account for this Big Bang? Genesis 1 and 3. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Immediately, the Big Bang occurred when God said, "Let there be light." All time and matter, all of space itself came into being from this single explosion. The fourth and final piece of scientific evidence that proves the universe had a beginning was actually discovered in 1965. That's when Arnold Pyzias and Robert Wilson detected strange radiation from their antenna at Bell Labs in Hamdo, New Jersey. Now, they initially thought it might be the result of bird droppings deposited on the antenna, but they soon discovered that what they were looking at were not false readings, but the background radiation from the initial Big Bang explosion. Can you imagine that? Scientists long believed that if the universe began with a cosmic explosion, that radiation from the explosion should still be present. Pyzias and Wilson actually detected the heat and radiation from the Big Bang explosion. Technically known as background cosmic radiation, this afterglow, if you will, was actually the light and heat from the initial Big Bang explosion. It was one of the most incredible discoveries of the 19th century, and it put to rest any doubt as to whether or not the universe had a beginning. It earned these two scientists Nobel Prizes. And so, there are no less than 4 scientific laws that prove the universe had a beginning. Number 1, there is the law of thermodynamics, which says that the universe is running out of energy. Number 2, there is the law of entropy, which states that the universe is headed toward a state of disorder. Number 3, there is the expanding universe. And number 4, there is cosmic background radiation. Our universe had a beginning. That can no longer be debated. And if our universe had a beginning, then it had to have a cause. That cause can only be attributed to someone outside creation. Hence, there must be a God. The overwhelming evidence for the Big Bang and its consistency with the biblical account in Genesis led the world-renowned astronomer Robert Jastrow to make this statement. He said, and I quote, "Astronomers now find they have painted themselves into a corner because they have proven by their own methods that the world began abruptly in an act of creation to which you can trace the seeds of every star, every planet, every living thing in this cosmos and on the earth. And they have found that all this happened as a product of forces they cannot hope to discover. That there are what I or anyone would call supernatural forces at work is now, I think, a scientifically proven fact." I believe in a creator because I live in a universe that did not create itself.